Hi, welcome to Firebox Print Studio. My name's Diane, and in this series of videos we're going to be looking at relief printing. We're going to try and cover everything you need to know about single colour printing. Now there are four main categories of printmaking. There's intaglio, planographic, stencil and relief. Now what divides these categories up is quite simply where the ink sits in relation to the non-inked areas. In relief printing, the ink sits on the uppermost surface of the block and the non-inked areas sit in the recesses. So imagine this is the detail of your relief printing block. You've created the recesses in the block by carving away the non-image areas, so that when you apply the ink, it only sits on the uppermost surface of the block. Then you apply your paper, pressure, which offsets the ink onto your paper, and that's your relief print. Relief printing can be divided further into other techniques. Now those divisions are normally based upon the medium which the printing block is composed of. Some of the most common are the woodcut, which is created on the side grain of a panel of wood, the wood engraving, which is created on the end grain, one which we're all pretty familiar with, which is the lino cut, which is carved in linoleum. But in this series of videos, we're going to substitute linoleum out and use flooring vinyl. Now I was a bit dubious of flooring vinyl when I first came across it as a relief printing medium, but I found that it's actually in many ways superior to your traditional linoleum. It remains flexible, robust, and it's quite resilient to some of the solvents and chemicals that you'll use in the printing process. Whereas linoleum, in time, can become brittle and crack. Now I've seen some of the most beautiful work created by artists destroyed before they've had a chance to finish printing them, all because linoleum has become brittle and it's cracked and destroyed the image. There are a couple of things to keep in mind as you're planning out your image. Firstly, if you're wanting a lot of smooth tonal gradations or continuous tone like in a photograph, or if you're wanting drawn qualities like in a graphite drawing or crayon, relief printing wouldn't be my first choice of the printmaking mediums to use. Now I'm not saying that achieving tonal gradation in a relief print is impossible. It's not, it can be done. But there are other printmaking mediums where it's much easier to capture those kind of qualities. Relief prints are characterised by a sharp contrast between image area and non-image area, or in this case, between black and white. Another important consideration when you are planning out your image, like in many printmaking mediums, is that the image needs to be created in reverse. Because when you ink your block and you transfer it to paper, in that transfer, when the ink's offset onto paper, it actually prints in reverse. So what I'd recommend is taking your initial drawing, and if your paper's thin enough, you can hold it up to a light source, say a window or a light box if you've got one, and you can just sketch out the reverse on the back of the sheet. But if that's not an option, take some tracing paper, anchor it down on one side, and trace out your image onto the tracing paper. Then flip the tracing paper and you'll have your reverse there, and you can transfer that down onto your block. Now this next step is totally optional, but before I transfer an image down to the block and start carving, I like to apply a little bit of dark drawing ink to the surface of the block. It just makes it a lot easier to see the drawing and also the carving marks that I've made. Now once the image is reversed, position the drawing on the vinyl and attach it at one point. Then using either a piece of transfer paper or carbon paper, trace the image onto the block. Some artists prefer to work directly onto the block with a pencil, pen or even permanent marker. That's all fine and good. Do that. But one thing to remember before you start inking, make sure you clean away all traces of your initial drawings, because otherwise that ink from your pen or your permanent marker can actually transfer into your ink. Now it's not such a problem if you're using black, but if you're using a lighter colour, it shows up. So that brings us to the end of this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at tools and actually carving the block. So take care and see you next time.